Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everybody, good Monday morning. My name is Nick Reed. A lot of excitement over the weekend. I know our happy hour Retro Metro, everyone talking about the Chinese spy balloon that was making its way over Missouri. Of course, it would get shot down Saturday. A lot of misinformation put out there as events unfolded, up to and including false claims that, when Trump was president, there were these spy balloons, and he didn't do anything about it, which immediately every person from the Trump administration who would have been in the know-how said this is not true. The administration would come back and say, well, maybe it happened, but nobody knew about it, which is clearly a much different situation. Though it does bring up new questions, and we'll explore some of that this morning. This appears to be another demonstration of what we are told is success with this administration, dealing with foreign countries, foreign adversaries. What we witness is a form of off the fly, if you will. Just, I think most of us believe, watching this play out, that nothing was going to be done, largely because of a desire to not upset the Chinese, so we would not have to put off the Secretary of State Blinken trip to China, looking to once again appease the communist Chinese. But those pesky Americans got in the way, started demanding accountability, and it became very clear, and you know those phone calls are coming into the White House from Democrat members of Congress, Democrat senators saying, you have to do something. My constituents are going mad over this thing. There really was, I think for most Americans, this sense of total disbelief that this was occurring, that we could watch it, that you could actually watch this play out. Talking with a number of you at the happy hour, words that were synonymous with violated kept coming up. And that was the feeling I had as well. But it wasn't just a violation, but that the people at the moment, for those first few days, who are supposed to be our defenders, were essentially saying, well, you can look up in the sky and see it if you want to, but we're just, not really going to do anything about it. No big deal. And it may have been the first time, I think it was the first time in my life as an American that I felt there was such a clear, unquestionable violation of our sovereignty, with the response from us being a shrug of the shoulders, again, initially. Now, this is, though, what I'm talking about, an administration that is led by the winds. There is no calculated way of dealing with things. What I suspect, and it's common sense, really, that after a barrage of phone calls from, I'm sure, Democrat senators and Democrat members of Congress telling the White House, you cannot allow this. You have to you've got to do something about this. You cannot continue this. And so that's when the decision was made. All right, well, we're going to have to shoot this down. Biden claims that Wednesday is when he told them to shoot it down, and they sort of overrid him, saying, well, it's too dangerous over land. We'll talk about that. But we learned that it was 8 days prior to that it was known and kept secret from the American people. Hit Alaska, parts of Canada, then Montana is when the American people began to learn of this and demanded some accountability. There's three instances that are very impactful in terms of our foreign relations / sovereignty, two more than three. that have resulted in Americans expressing and in some instances actually picking up the heavy load themselves and saying, if our government's not going to do it, then we will. There was a lot of discussion. Some of it was joking discussion, but there was a lot of serious discussion. Is there any way any civilians can bring this thing down? You had Nick Schroer send a letter to the governor, and he had tweeted out, I hereby urge Governor Parson, Missouri, to use the Air Force National Guard and any other state resources necessary to bring down the spy balloon and protect Missouri residents. Feel free to send the scraps back to the CCP First Class thereafter, #MOLEG, Missouri Legislature. But you did have other people just sort of almost spitballing in America. Is there any way Americans, is this too high up in the air? Can somebody shoot this out of the sky? And while it may seem like fanciful talk, it's because there was a desire to take care of business. We saw this in Afghanistan, where you had private citizens. Of course, Glenn Beck, we carry on this show, was raising donations. Many of you paid to get some of those people out that Biden just 2 weeks prior promised we would never leave behind. You've had people asking, what can we do to secure the border? Some Americans actually go down to the border in order to try and just prevent this massive invasion from continuing, largely populated by human traffickers. And I think that, one, it says something that is virtuous about Americans, but unfortunately, it also says a lot about the current administration. That you have the American people that are saying, we have got, if our leadership is not going to be in charge, if the president of the United States is not going to protect us, then what can we do to do it ourselves? One may argue that is the spirit of what made America America, and at least in parts of the country, it's not yet dead. Jason Rimo with the latest news update. First Alert forecast sponsored by Navant Employee Benefits. That work mostly cloudy, a high of 65 today, rain likely 43 tonight. 40% chance of rain tomorrow with a high of 45. Wednesday, rain again, 49. Then mostly sunny on Thursday, 53. The American Transmissions talk and text line 447 KSGF. We are still not on Facebook. We are on
No.
YouTube.
We are, and
Are we able to put the YouTube link in the out on Facebook? Can we do that?
yeah,
Like, on our
I
Facebook?
shared the link to
Okay,
your
cool.
Facebook page,
All right,
and then
very
I'll
good.
take them right over to our YouTube.
Okay. All right. And so my understanding for everyone else also is that we're not really banned from using it. You just got us banned from streaming live. Is that correct?
So the bans are just really stupid.
Well, it's
that
Facebook.
I mean, they don't even make sense. So I can like things on Facebook, I
Okay.
just can't comment, and I can't live stream. I can't accept phone calls. I can't advertise. Yeah, so I don't know. So unfortunately, my Facebook is linked to yours
Right.
that does the live stream.
Right.
But joke's on them. I'll just go right over to YouTube and start a live stream,
Ha ha ha.
and then share that live stream
yeah.
to Facebook.
Until they figure that one out.
Yeah.
Till they get her figured
Jerks.
out. Jerks. They're eating their jerk sandwiches. American Transmission talk and text line 447 KSGF. I wasn't around for Sputnik's satellite, but this has to have been a similar feeling that Americans were feeling. I noticed this, or I noted this earlier in the program, that at our happy hour there was a lot of that talk of feeling violated, and I always try to be very reflective of these things, and I think, well, but I surely. Of course, 9/11, but there are other instances of things occurring in which there has been some overt act that is a violation of our sovereignty. And for me, upon that reflection, the troubling sense that I got was that the people who are supposed to be, that you look to and say, all right, it's on now. I remember George Bush, he's standing up there, and I'm not equating 9/11 to this, but just, Bush was like, I can hear you, the world hears you, and the people who did this are going to hear all of us soon. And it just, the first couple of days of the Americans knowing that this was going on, and this blasé attitude from the people that were supposed to be protecting us, and whether it is accurate or not, I think it's clear the perception here, which I do believe is accurate, is that they weren't going to do anything other than the fact that it became clear that the American people were furious over this, and they were afraid it was going to hurt them politically. Mixed messages, which oftentimes are intentional, coming out of the White House, confuse the matter as best as possible. This is Biden on a tarmac after the balloon got shot down, being asked about it.
On the balloon, I order the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible. They decided, without doing damage to anyone on the ground, they decided that the best time to do that was as it got over water outside within the 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down, and I want to compliment our aviators who did it, and we'll have more to report on this a little later. Thank you.
Mr. President, what did you say about China? What's your message to China?
You were saying the recommendation was from your national
I
security.
told them to shoot it down.
On Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
But the recommendation
They
from
said to me, let's wait till the safest place to do it.
Now, with this current administration, it's fair to say you can't just at face value believe whatever it is they say, because they have so often been caught not telling the truth. Biden, you could hear he was almost indignant at the fact that perhaps it wasn't really his decision. I told him to shoot it down on Wednesday, but they said, no, we needed to wait until it was someplace more safe. Now, I don't know that I buy this. Well, in fact, I don't buy it. Not that there isn't a degree of potential danger shooting something like that down. But it first hit Alaska. Americans became aware of it over Montana. I have to believe that just as our technology sits today, we could have a pretty good idea of a place over land that it could be shot down and most likely not hit any civilians. Now, is there always a chance? Yeah, but there's also a chance that there's some sort of boat out there that it could have hit. You could have had some people out there fishing that it could have hit. So simply because it's over the water, that certainly does not diminish the possibility that people might get hurt. It also seems to be an evolving there. It's constantly evolving. You may recall in the very beginning of this, one of the reasons we were told that it was nothing to worry about is because it was so high up, it was above airspace, right? Remember that? Like, it's not causing any harm to anyone. It's not causing any danger. In fact, it's so high up, it's above airspace. Well, by Sunday, that narrative have changed, and perhaps even before that. But Pete Buttigieg was out there claiming that it wasn't the lack of shooting it down at that point wasn't any longer because it wasn't causing any danger to airplanes, but because it could cause danger to airplanes. And in fact, if it was shot down, the debris field would go through the 60,000 or go through that area of space that commercial airlines are allowed to fly. So that narrative switched. We have been told that upon Biden saying shoot it down on Wednesday, he was overridden or recommended wait until, again, it's going to be less likely to cause harm to the American population. Well, that has sort of shifted as well to, well, no, we wanted it to be shot down where it was most likely to suffer the least amount of damage for the purposes of being able to collect the hardware and hopefully make some determination as to what was there. Now, I don't know whether or not that is accurate also. There is a myth out there that hitting water from way high up doesn't do much damage. People think, if you fall out of an airplane to the water or something, then you're going to survive. No, it kills you. It's like hitting asphalt. But metal, different. A human body's different than some sort of machinery. Though I have seen, like many of you, anytime that there's footage of an airplane accident that is in the ocean, it is the plane's torn to shreds. So I think that there is maybe this desire that people will believe, it'll just splash in the water, it'll all be intact, as opposed to hitting the ground when it would blow apart or disintegrate, essentially. Now, hitting the water, would it suffer potentially less damage? That could very well be. But again, we've got to rely on outside experts to answer these questions because you can't believe anything that comes out of the White House. I would also think that salt water, if you're talking about electronic components, it's one of the most damaging substances that you can have around electronic components, and that is salt water. And so to have that dumped into the ocean, to me, again, this is not as an expert by any stretch of the imagination, that would be damaging as well. So is it going to be less damaging to hit the ocean and to submerge in salt water as opposed to hitting a field somewhere? I don't really know the answer to that, but what I do feel is probably an accurate statement is it's not going to just land and splash in the water without any sort of damage being done to it. Also, and this is where I get they're trying to, I pick up on these little things where you can tell they are trying to mislead people. I first heard, have you heard the 7 miles of debris? Pete Buttigieg is the first person that I heard say this. And the 7 miles of debris that he is referencing is the context is justification for not dropping it over land. Because that's a huge debris field. And so we're not talking about, something the size of Dairy Queen. We're talking about 7 miles of debris. The damage that could do. Well, number one, what sort of debris are we talking about? And number two, if something lands in the ocean, yes, it's going to spread out a lot because the water and the waves and the flowing. And so what I believe is occurring here is an attempt to mislead people into believing that there also would have been a 7-mile debris field if it had hit the ground, and that's further proof, further evidence, further validation as to why they chose not to shoot it over the ground. But if, in fact, the 7-mile debris field is accurate, being a 7-mile debris field in the ocean is not the same outcome you're going to have if it drops on land. 447 KSGF, the American Transmissions Talk and Text line. I'm Nick Reed. American Transmissions Talk a Text line to text. I don't believe it was a spy balloon. Chinese have satellites that orbit and sit over the U.S., can gain pictures for similar information every day. Could this possibly have been a dry run for an EMP attack? Boy, that would be devastating. Now, I will say, again, I'm not an expert, so I try to glean information from people who were told are experts. And one of the compare and contrasts that I have heard presented is that these balloons are able to obtain more detailed information than satellite information gathering devices are. Now, again, I'm sure even the experts are probably unaware of certain technologies that exist, but that has been presented. Does that mean it's true? Of course not. But that is something that I have heard noted. Let's go to Randy in Buffalo. Randy, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nick. Good morning. Been a long time.
I know. It's been years, it seems like. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Yeah, I mean, World War II, Japan attached bombs to balloons and sent them toward the U.S.
Yeah.
You know, and this may have been China's trial balloon to gather intelligence for the next balloon they send over, which might be bioterrorism or a dirty bomb or any number of things. I mean, that's why it should have been shot down over Alaska and not waited until it got all the intelligence it wanted.
And, of course, these are a lot of the questions that reasonable people have. One, why did we not? In fact, here I'm going to play some audio from retired General Jack Keane on this very issue, Randy. Here is Keane on Fox News.
We finally did what we should have done at the beginning. Remember, this was approaching the United States over water. It was approaching the Aleutian Islands over water. And we had plenty of opportunity to take it down then, and that's when it should have happened. We had to be tracking it from mainland China across the Pacific Ocean, and we had plenty of warning to put together an operation that we are conducting now on the East Coast that should have been done there. And by the way, we have alert aircraft in Alaska for the principal reason of a penetration coming largely from Russia. And that's why that aircraft are there. And they would have been able to respond to this when it approached United States in name of the Aleutian Islands. Now we're doing it on the back door.
You know, the questions of this, of course, I think, again, reasonable people can ask. One, why did we know when it was over Alaska? And if not, why not? I mean, as he noted, that's why we're set up there for these very purposes. So this means one of two things. Either somehow we missed it until it was so far inland that some decision was made to just not do anything about it for a period of time. Perhaps we thought, well, it's going into Canada, not our problem, let them deal with it. And then, of course, it got into Montana. Or did we miss it altogether? And if that's the case, there's some questions that need to be answered. There are a lot of what ifs, but the one thing that, again, boy, there's so many components to this. I fear, much like Afghanistan, which was clearly a disaster, despite the fact that still even last week, Biden's chief of staff claimed it was the greatest humanitarian success ever, that no one is going to lose their job over this. No one. Whether it is because we were misled, whether it is because this was something that has been known for some time but has been kept from us for whatever reason, or we just incompetence, didn't know it, whatever the reason. See, we talk about the shooting down eventually, the shooting down of the balloon, at least sent some message to the communist Chinese. But what about the people who have failed us thus far? What message does it send when we continue to keep these same people who make these decisions in positions of power? One could argue that the message sent to countries like China from that very approach with Afghanistan, and that is the refusal to, one, acknowledge that we did very, very poorly there and hold anybody accountable, that signals the weakness, that we refuse, instead of saying, no, our standards are much higher than this, and we will not accept this. We're like, hey, that was a great job. Good job, guys. Here's your participation trophy. And that signals weakness, which leads to potentially countries like China thinking, well, let's give this a go. We're going to get a traffic update here, continue on. One of the areas of this that I really do hope gets questioned, and I do think some of these people need to be brought before Congress to answer these questions, is have people like General Milley, are there people, whether it's him or other people in our government, who have known about these things but aren't telling the administration? I think that is also a very real possibility, that these things are being kept from whomever president is. Let's not forget, there were some people in the military that bragged about lying to Trump about what was going on militarily in order to manipulate him into not doing certain things or into doing certain other things, particularly when it came to Syria. Is that happening again? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Floors Plus Nixis, Springfield, all of your flooring needs, hardwood floors of all different kinds, luxury vinyl planking, which is a route that we went through most of the main part of our home. It's got the look and feel of actual wood, but it is so much more durable, especially if you have pets, dogs with their little claws that could scratch up certain woods or the finish on top of the woods. You don't have that problem with the new luxury vinyl planking. And, of course, carpeting. And plus, if you need customized tiled showers or backsplashes, Floors Plus Nix and Springfield under Nix endorsements, KSGF.com. Mostly cloudy, 65 for a high today, 43 tonight. 40% chance of rain tomorrow with a high of 45. Wednesday, rain, windy, 49 and 53 on Thursday. Okay, so let's hit some of your text messages on the American Transmissions Talk and Text line. Would a Chinese bomber now be allowed to fly over the U.S. and not shot down? I'm big into the game of parallels or, well, with this and that, just like that text is. And one might say a spy balloon. Let's look at an actual spy. Let's say that we catch somebody that is a spy that has infiltrated one of our top facilities. Now, let's not be naive here. I think that we probably all assume that they already have, particularly the access that they have bought in research labs on university campuses. At the same time, we'd like to think, however, that if those individuals were caught, we would stop them from doing it. Now, we might do a little spying on them, just to see what it is, where they're going, whom is it they're talking to, all for the purpose of seeing how widespread or how deep it is. But the initial presentation from the balloon was that it's not harming anyone, and we're not going to do anything about it. I believe that doesn't set well with most Americans. Do you think Biden was told about a balloon? He misunderstood, thought someone was coming to the White House to make balloon animals for him. Yes, I think that is possible. Somebody did lose their job over the Chinese balloon incident. The head of the Chinese meteorological department. Now they're noting we forfeit a military base in Afghanistan to Chinese, then enable them to spread the better part of a week surveying our military bases. How will we be assisting them next? This is all complicated by the relationship that the Biden family has with revenue coming out of China. And, of course, this is not anything that the media is even going to talk about. I think we can all fairly assume if the shoe were on the other foot of the previous president, and if you had Donald Trump Jr. and a laptop, and we know for a fact he was getting all this money from China, and then in the laptop he talks about how dad gets a cut of it, and you have these moves made, there would very reasonably questions would be asked about, does one have anything to do with the other? Unfortunately, the media is going to pretend as if there's nothing there. There's no there there. But we as Americans recognize that this is a problematic relationship. And though Biden does not have, he's got a consistency in demonstrating, one, the wrong approach when it comes to foreign relations, but also tremendous weakness. Now, is this just consistent Biden? Or is this because the Chinese have all of this dirt on him, that being the fact that they've been funneling money to him through Hunter Biden, and the Bidens know it, and so they're doing everything they can not to make the Chinese upset? We don't know the answer to that. Now, I think there's a third very real possibility here. And potential evidence of that is something that was claimed at one point over the last several days from the administration, and that was, well, this happened during the Trump administration as well. You know, the Democrats, they always try to bring it back to Trump. Well, Trump did it. Trump did it. Trump did it. That did not last long because you had Trump, you had Radcliffe, you had anyone and everyone who would have been privy to that information saying this is absolutely not true. It was after that forceful pushback that U.S. intelligence claimed that the spy balloons flew over the U.S. several times but went undetected. So now they're saying, oh, well, now we're looking back. We recognize they did do it, but nobody in the Trump administration knew about it. Now, the media, of course, their attempt here is to try and protect Biden, to protect the decision. You know, their group, Marco Rubio, was on one of the shows, and they're like, well, Trump did it. And Rubio, not knowing the full story, reflected on, listen, the thing that we do know right now, the difference is when Trump was president and this allegedly occurred, it was on the outskirts of the United States. This very deliberately went over high secure, what should be highly secure, military facilities with very sensitive information. And you could look at the map. I mean, it's just one military base to another, to another, to another. Hit Montana, hit Kansas, hit Missouri, go down. You know, I mean, it's just like, it was very clear that it was not accidental. Now, if the U.S. intelligence, this is a town hall piece, admits that Chinese surveillance balloons allegedly crossed over the United States several times in the past, however, they did go undetected. Well, okay. A senior Biden administration official said the Chinese spy balloons flew over the country at least 3 times during the Trump administration, as well in parts of Texas and Florida. However, former Trump officials debunked that claim that Chinese surveillance balloons flew over the nation, telling Fox News it never happened. But the officials claim that this is part of a larger pattern and that it did happen, but they didn't know it at the time. Now, who's they? How is it that it's known now, but it wasn't known then? So this is what I would like to see explored. Did somebody in the government know about it? And if so, why did they not tell Trump? I'm not saying it isn't possible in retrospect to determine, to learn that, oh gosh, well, we went back and we found actually there was a little blip here and a little blip there. That doesn't sound likely to me. What sounds likely to me is the people who are privy to this information realize this was not going well at all. And that decisions being made in the name of Biden were being greatly criticized in a bipartisan fashion. And so the instinct in order to try and dampen that is to say, well, Trump did it too. Then having to walk it back and say, well, Trump really didn't know about it. It was undetected. Well, was it undetected? How is it that we know now, but we did not know then? What reason would there be? We got to get a traffic update, but I'm telling you, General Milley is someone that needs to be answering some questions here. Milley evidently is the person that was conveying to Biden, according to a number of stories, that this was going on. So clearly General Milley is somebody that is very influential and instrumental in how all this plays out. And we're talking about the Chinese. And we're talking about Milley. Milley is somebody that also, it was discovered, went around Trump during the Trump administration and gave the Chinese a heads up. Don't worry, I'll let you know if the administration's going to do something that is detrimental to you as a nation. If he's going to launch some sort of attack, don't worry, I'll give you a heads up. Well, is Milley, did he know about these things before, but was he protecting the communist Chinese? These are very, to me, obvious questions that need to be asked. Here's a traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. All of this occurrence makes me believe that, or it further solidifies, I should say, my increasing belief that you have some of these people, if you want to call them deep state, whatever, that pretty much only tell the president, whomever it is, what they think the president needs to know. And when I say that, not because there are certain things that are incidental that are not worthy of the president's time, based on his agenda, but based on their agenda. And this acknowledgement that this occurred several times during the Trump administration, but they say it was undetected. Well, obviously it was detected for us to know this, and for them to know it so quickly. Why was no one in the Trump administration told about it? Who made the decision not to tell them? And Milley, who, according to reports, was sort of the point person going back, relaying the information to Biden, this latest round, or this particular instance, was he also in the loop, or the person who would be telling Trump? And then if he did not, why did he not? You pair that with the fact that he had acknowledged that he thought Trump was so dangerous that he let the Chinese know, don't worry. If Trump's going to do anything like invade, I'll give you guys a head up. He should have been, in my opinion, thrown in jail for that. Thrown in prison. But we don't have those standards apparently here in the United States. So somebody who has admitted to that, it does not strike me as unusual that they may also have not told President Trump if they knew this was going on, because they were afraid that he would be too adversarial with the Chinese. And we know how much Milley loves his Chinese counterpart, the bosom buddies. And so we need to keep this from Trump because he'll escalate things unnecessarily. I think any reasonable person could see that as plausible. Let's go to Ray in Aurora. Hi, Ray. How are you?
Doing good, doing good.
Excellent.
Hey, you know, back in the 70s, NORAD had radar systems that could track migratory birds. In the late 80s, early 90s, I was in the Navy. I was a radar technician. Then we had seaborne radar that we could track anything flying. The only place we'd lose it is in ground clutter. If it was anywhere from the horizon to the edge of space, we could track it. There is no way that it's possible that these balloons could get to the United States without us knowing it.
There's so
it's physically impossible.
And to me, it appears as if they are, at least at this point, still hoping that Americans will. I believe they're going to be very disappointed in the American people not just shutting up and saying, okay, whatever you say. There's still a significant portion of the population that says this stuff does not make sense, that have access to this information. People like you who recognize that we have had the technology, that there's no way that this went undetected all this time. And I really believe more and more as we see the players involved, the people like Milley, the acknowledgments during the Trump administrations that certain information was kept from Trump because of fear that he would do certain things or not do certain things dealing with our foreign adversaries, that there's a very good chance Biden would not have found out about this had it not become something that was public. The problem was, apparently, when it started floating back into U.S. airspace over Montana, people just started seeing it, and they were like, what the hell is that? People thought it was the moon, but then they thought, no, that's not, and they get out their telescopes or binoculars and so forth, and, of course, it hit social media, and I don't know that it wasn't at that point. They're like, well, we've got to tell Biden now, and this is when, you know, he claims on Wednesday he said to shoot it down, but they said, no, we need to wait until it's over water. But then, of course, the reports are that it was actually 8 days prior to that it was known. Again, does that mean Biden knew 8 days in advance, or the behind-the-scenes people knew, but they were keeping it from him? These are all questions that need to be answered. I mean, we as Americans are probably gathering as much intelligence about our government from this as the communist Chinese are at this point, or, you know, at least recognizing that there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. Ray, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. We got a traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. All right, we got news in 60 seconds. I am Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I am Nick Reed. Congressman Burleson is shortly making his way to D.C. We're going to see if we can have him for a few moments coming up here in just a bit. Also scheduled a bit after 7:30, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. A couple of different things we want to talk about with him, the ESG situation and what he's doing on that. Former Attorney General Schmidt, who's now U.S. Senator, he's carrying on his efforts to fight back against that in the Senate. And the now current Attorney General Bailey here in Missouri is continuing on in that office, doing the same thing. Also, he has demanded that Missouri schools adopt resolutions prohibiting drag shows for school children. And we'll get the latest from him on that. Also, the American Transmissions Talk and Text line 447-KSGF. Friday, we will be on location, as we are every Friday, the Friday Road Show, sponsored by Affordable Towing. That is at Scramblers. There is coming up also the second annual KY3 Women's Show. If you would like to attend that, it is on Saturday, February 18th. And that is going to be, let's see, over the 417. I was trying to see times here. Go to ksgf.com. You can actually get registered for a chance to win tickets to that event, which is presented by Convoy, Women at the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds E-Plex. Again, Saturday, February 18th. So that should be all the relevant information there. Jason Rima with news. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Mostly cloudy, 65 for a high today. Rain likely tonight, 43, with a 40% chance of rain tomorrow, high of 45. Again, Wednesday, rain, 49. Thursday, mostly sunny with a high of 53. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. If you need somebody, if you need the best to help you buy or sell a home, then Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. If you need somebody just to ask some preliminary questions, like how much do you think my house is worth, or do I need to put on a new roof, or the air conditioner, or the carpeting's outdated but it's in decent shape, is it worth putting new carpeting in? These are all questions she can answer. I can't stress enough, don't do any money spending things to your home until you talk with her first. The instinct for a lot of people is, well, we want to get it ready based on what we think is going to make it ready before we even show it to a realtor, because we don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want Emily to think, my gosh, these guys, they didn't even prep for this. No, that's what she's there to help you do, because there are a lot of things that you might think you need to spend money on that, in fact, are not going to get you any more money out of your house and may not even help you sell it any quicker. So check with her first. She's an expert in that area. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You can find her under Nick's endorsements at ksgf.com. Springfield's Talk 1041. We are not on Facebook. If you do go to our Facebook page, it'll give you a link to our YouTube video feed. So you can still watch us and then comment if you'd like, either on YouTube, I suppose, or Facebook also. Congressman Burleson, we are checking in with him this morning, and I had a number of things with which to discuss. However, over the last several days, of course, there have been some slight developments that have people chattering, this whole Chinese balloon thing. It almost seems like an ever-evolving story, and it just, to me, echoes Afghanistan in the sense that we have a very difficult time figuring out who's responsible for what decision, what did they know, when did they know it. As usual, like with Afghanistan, there's an attempt to point fingers at Trump to some capacity, which that has essentially fizzled out. What is it? What's the talk and the feel that you are getting regarding all of this as it continues to unfold?
Hey, good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
Yeah, it was quite a weekend, and I was stuck to, the headlines. I was trying to watch the news because I'm not getting information, certainly from, the military. We are, and this is an interesting thing. As a new incoming member of Congress, you kind of realize you don't. Sometimes you get news after it's, you find out after it's in the news.
Right.
And so then I asked my staff, what authority do I have? What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Can I require a briefing? Can I require updates? And pretty much, we can get a briefing, but it's going to be after the fact.
Sure.
But it is frustrating, for sure. And this whole situation is just horrible, right? You've got the Chinese government's basically thumbing their nose at the United States. They have this whole experiment that started with Richard Nixon and everyone thinking that we could commercialize China, bring them into the world marketplace, and suddenly they will embrace democracy and all these Western ideas. We basically accepted that as a failure. That has been an absolute failure. It's never going to work. And so we basically, China has put us into what I think is a Cold War. It's going to be probably different than the Cold War we have in Russia. So we're certainly, I think this is probably, just like the Cold War began with the downing of the U-2.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, Powers.
And in Russia, the Powers plant, and then I think this is kind of the spark or the beginning of a Cold War with China.
It's, to me, I fear we're going through this pattern that we were in pre 9/11 2001, where after the big indisputable attack occurred, and there was all of this reflection that they've actually been at war with us for a long time. We just didn't know it. And the development of these plans to make sure that we're not caught off guard and to adjust to these new forms of warfare. I feel like this is where we are again with China. They have had their own version of a war against us with the fentanyl that they're funneling through the drug cartels. They are paying sums of money that are just massive to universities to have access to those universities. They are, through pop culture, whether it's superstars like LeBron James or the access movie studios want to have into China. They're gaining access that way. And it just seems as if all of these avenues, they are infiltrating us in ways that are damaging to our society. And I feel like it's September 10th, 2001, where we don't realize that they're at war with us. We're at war. We just don't realize it.
Yeah. And I found out last week. I was in the oversight hearing, and we were, gathering information from the Solicitor General and others about the state of the fraud and abuse that occurred during the pandemic. And it was unbelievably disturbing to learn that the Chinese government has sponsored cybersecurity hackers, right? And other people, but they were infiltrating our pandemic through mules in the United States, and they, to the tune of tens of billions of dollars that they stole from the United States because our system is so loose that we allow pretty much anyone to file for unemployment benefits or for the SBA loans, the PPP loans. And so they manipulated that and used that. It wasn't just the Chinese government, Russia did it, and so did Nigeria.
Right.
And so, so the question was, well, everyone kind of started thinking, well, we just need to investigate what happened with the pandemic. No, this is an ongoing thing. Like they have a concerted, continuous effort to hack the United States, to steal money from the United States, and I think that they are a hostile actor, and they are certainly not an ally.
The response to some of this and the finger pointing at Trump, at one point they said, well, this happened under Trump, and then Radcliffe, Trump, and virtually anyone who would know that, they forcefully came out and said this isn't true at all, and they're sort of backtracking intelligence, saying, well, yeah, but it was undetected. I find that a little hard to believe that they're saying, well, we just found that out, or it was found out after Trump left office. May not be impossible, but that just seems unlikely to me. What I fear is going on here is that the intelligence community knew about it, but they were fearful of how Trump might respond, and so they kept that information from him. My fear is that, I've seen a number of these articles that are referencing Milley as sort of the point person that was keeping Biden in the loop. We know that during the Trump years, he was telling China, don't worry, if Trump's ever going to do anything overt, I'll give you guys a heads up. So I fear
that's true.
Yeah, and so he was also in a position of authority when supposedly this happened before under Trump. Did he keep it from Trump because he was afraid Trump would, act aggressively towards China one way or another? And as incompetent as Biden may be, I think we still need to protect the presidency. And if we do have these people that are just based on their own foreign policy beliefs, hiding information from the president because they feel as if he will do something they don't agree with, that goes very deep. And I think that there at least needs to be asked questions.
Yeah, I intend to ask those questions. It's my hope that James Comer brings in the military for questioning on this issue, and that I'll be front row to be able to ask those questions. That to give you an idea, Nick, I was in the hearing. I'm the last man on the totem pole, so I have the least seniority or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so they start from the top row going out, and then they kind of snake their way down towards the front. And I am dead center front row, right in front of the witnesses, and I'm the last person to get to ask the question. So for last week, it took 5 hours to get to me where I get to ask my 5 minutes of questions. But the good side of that is I got plenty of time to listen and kind of prepare and try to use that 5 minutes wisely. But going back to what you were saying about them pointing at Trump and all these things, that is such a childish thing to do. It's like my daughters when if you find something that's spilled on the ground, clean it up, right? Even if it wasn't you, help each other clean it up, right? Rather than point fingers and then nothing happens. That is an adult does adult things and responsible things and takes responsibility and jumps in before you start pointing fingers at each other.
We're talking with Congressman Burleson, and I have one other question, and then for people, the background noise is in the airport there, just so people know what the background noise is. I will say this one thing, and what disturbed me greatly about Afghanistan is that no one was held accountable, and whatever is going on here, whether it was we somehow really did not know that balloon was in our airspace until it was too late, or we did know and we were just going to let it happen until there was a public outcry, I fear that no one will again be held accountable, which that to me sends a very bad message to the rest of the world. The State of the Union is tomorrow. I'm sure, well, there are a lot of questions. Is Biden even going to mention this? Is he going to try to skip over it? But the economy, I assume that we're going to be told, regardless of what we feel, regardless of the diminished capacity and power that our dollar has, that everything's wonderful and we should be grateful for it. What are you expecting?
Yeah, I'm expecting him to to preen and gloss over. I think that he'll try to talk about the unemployment numbers, which means that it is good that America's bounced back and people have gotten to work. But I think that the reason so many people sadly are getting back to work is because they can't afford to live in America anymore. You have a lot of retirees that have re-entered the workforce because they can't because this inflation has disrupted their retirement plans. I still think that we as a nation have a lot to do to get back on track. We've got to fix the welfare system, and especially from last week in that hearing, seeing how much fraud occurs within the unemployment system in the United States. We have got to address these crippling issues, or we will never be. We won't return to our strength.
And just so people have an idea here, one of the questions that you had asked during that hearing, you noted that evidently there were a tremendous number of federal employees that were not at work. They were still getting paid, and they still, at the same time, were applying for and getting COVID relief dollars as if they were not being paid. And then the answer to that was, yeah, well, we just don't have a way to check that. Am I correct?
That's right. So we learned that state employees and federal employees, while they were collecting paychecks from state governments and the federal government, started collecting or applied for and started collecting unemployment benefits and sometimes PPP loans. Now, if it was, a spouse that owned a business or something like that, one could understand, but that's not the case when you're talking about unemployment benefits.
Right.
And so that's a very disturbing trend. I would expect that they not only go after those individuals to retrieve the money, but they go after prosecution of those individuals.
And that was going to be my final thought on it. Is we're not unfamiliar with hearing stories, some even locally, of people facing prison time for doing just that. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of Americans, they see people in government doing it, and they don't expect accountability because of the two different systems of justice that we have. But we shall see. Congressman Burleson, safe travels, and appreciate you making time for us this morning.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great week.
All right, you do the same. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. You're thinking of just looking at a home? You're not really necessarily in the market to buy, but hey, well, look, just in case we come across that unicorn, if you will. But you haven't bothered to go to iwantagreathomeloan.com and gotten that piece of paper that says, oh yeah, you've got it, you're taken care of. Don't go that route. It's not smart. Would you go to the grocery store and you think, oh, do I have any way to pay for this? I don't know. I'll just wait until I get my cart full, and then if I decide that I actually want to buy all of the things, then I'll look. And if I don't have it, then I guess I'll. No, you always make sure you have it. Sometimes if you realize you don't, you turn around, you go back home, and you get it. Well, why look at homes unless you have that home loan secured? I want a great homeloan.com because you do. Talking to Congressman Burleson there and the use of all of these COVID dollars and how there were all of these employees of the government that were getting paid while not working and then also getting unemployment and or COVID dollars. It isn't just the nefarious use or the acquisition of these dollars through means that are perhaps illegal that I find concerning. Now, I remember in the heat of all of it, the COVID dollars, we've got to this COVID package, we've got to get it, we have to do it. And it was all in the context of small businesses being forced to close, people losing their jobs. How is it they're going to pay for groceries? And that's why we were told we've got to get those dollars out there. We have to get them out there. I bring this up because of KY3 story. Springfield leaders to discuss purchase of Hammond's Field at upcoming council meeting, and they list a number of things that are to be discussed, and one of them is a first reading, accepting COVID dollars, the America recovery. Remember that? We got to get those dollars out there, and it's going to be a first reading to accept some of these funds for a construction project at the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds. City leaders would accept $10 million to fund the construction of a 100,000 square foot, two-story multi-purpose arena. The new arena would include a restaurant, a full kitchen, 3 concession stands, an event office space. The lower level would be 21,000 square feet with $10,000 of an agricultural learning center, and it would replace the original 2,200-seat livestock arena that was demolished. The construction schedule submitted to the city council plans for construction would start in March. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a need for this facility. I'm not saying this isn't anything in terms of judgment of Ozark Empire Fairgrounds, but whenever they were running around talking about the desperate need to get these recovery dollars out there in the context of COVID, and we're seeing small businesses forced to shut their doors, we're seeing people living paycheck to pay, were you thinking this is what some of your tax dollars would be going for in that context? Springfield's Talk 1041 traffic update then. Attorney General Andrew Bailey is going to join us. ESG, drag shows, among other things. We'll speak with him on next. I'm Nick Reed. American Transmissions talk and text line 447 KSGF. First alert forecast, cloudy today, 65 for a high. 43 for a low tonight. 40% chance of rain tomorrow. High of 45 Wednesday, rain again, 49. An effort to enforce laws is written. Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey joining a coalition of 21 state attorneys general in the firing off of a letter to two proxy advisory companies regarding their ESG, environmental social governance, investment practices. Now, if you are a listener to this station, you've been aware of this for long enough. You remember when it was all conspiracy theory stuff, when Glenn Beck, who really, I say, had put this on the map in terms of public knowledge and recognition, and he was dismissed as some sort of lunatic conspiracy theorist. And as usual with the left, the very people who deny something, once it becomes clear it is occurring, they then justify it. And we see that with ESG. I want to welcome the Attorney General. Thank you for being with us. You know, this was something that when Schmidt was Attorney General, he focused on. He went to the Senate. He's focusing on it there. And fortunately, it seems as if the Attorney General office still has their eye focused on this with you in that position. If you would, tell us why it is that this is of concern to you. And, of course, there are a number of other states, 21 total, that are part of this letter. And what does it mean?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. But what this means is that the Missouri Attorney General's office, as long as I'm here, we're going to stand up and protect Missourians' hard-earned dollars and enforce the laws as written. We're not going to let a woke left-wing ideology override and damage and endanger Missourians' investments. And that's what this is about. And so kind of three lines of effort here. Number one, the one you've identified, which is that we filed suit with 24 total states, 23 other states, in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas, challenging a Department of Labor rule. That rule is called the Prudence and Loyalty in Selecting Plan Investments Rule. So the very title of the rule identifies it as an ESG effort. That's going to maximize focus and attention on social issues over protecting Missourians' hard-earned dollars that have been invested in their savings plans, their retirement plans, and their 401ks. And so that's what we're doing on that. We got to get this lawsuit underway. There's strength in numbers. We're excited to have other states joining us and to be leading this effort to try to put a stop to this rule that would endanger Missourians' investments. But we've also sent a letter to two proxy companies who manage investment portfolios and warned them about going down the ESG road. Their leadership has indicated an intent to use ESG as an investment strategy. And we've warned them that that would likely be in breach of their fiduciary duty, their legal obligation to protect investment dollars. We're also ongoing with our Morningstar investigation that General Schmidt launched into consumer protection on whether or not Morningstar was prioritizing left-wing social agenda ESG over protecting investment dollars and in breach of fiduciary duty. So three lines of effort. We're excited to keep up the fight on this issue because it's important to protect Missouri investors' hard-earned dollars.
I know everybody seems to live in their own little cultural bubble, and it's surprising to me, or at least the presentation with some companies, is that this is a wildly popular thing, ESG. And I know it's not investment per se, but I'm a consumer of Liberty for my electricity, and the latest email I got, I mean, they led with, hey, we just want you to know we're all in with this ESG stuff. And I'm just like, you're telling people about this? So obviously there are some companies that feel as if this is some sort of winning marketing strategy.
Well, it's frightening because it's actually destructive to the market. It is destructive to earning potential. It's destructive to the generation of capital. So it's actually frightening. And what it shows is that people are more interested in left-wing woke indoctrination than they are in protecting consumers' hard-earned dollars. And we're about protecting Missourians and enforcing laws as written. And that's why we have these three lines of efforts ongoing.
We're talking with Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. I've noticed this pattern with the left in this country. They will find an issue that is not an issue, and they will make it an issue. And then when the vast majority of people say, yeah, that's not really appropriate, they act as if you are the oddball one. And these drag shows, dragging kids to drag shows, It's just like, number one, what is this obsession? Aside from whether it's appropriate or not, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen adults so obsessed, or a segment of the population, with something like this, and I don't know how long. I mean, it's just they're drawn towards it, and then they feel this instinctual need to introduce small children to it. You have directed a letter, or you are rather demanding that Missouri schools adopt the resolution that would prohibit drag shows for school children. Again, not something you would think would even be needed, let alone controversial, yet somehow it is.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this story play out on the national level for years now, and it was frightening then, but it's come home here in mid-Missouri, and that's even more frightening. And this is about defending our children's innocence and empowering parents. I mean, I think everyone can get on board with this idea that education, school should be about education, not indoctrination, and parents have a say in that process. And I would point your attention to Section 170.015 of the revised statutes of Missouri. That statute is how the General Assembly has codified guardrails on how human sexuality is to be taught in schools. And it does not authorize drag shows. And it also requires parental notification and parental opt-in or opt-out of any curriculum. And so those two principles were violated in this instance. And so what we've done is demand that Columbia Public Schools retain all records related to this shameful behavior. And we've demanded that any school official who knew or should have known of the drag show as a part of the event that they took the kids to needs to resign or be terminated at this point in order to restore trust between the school district and the parents. We've gone on to produce a model draft resolution that we would like school boards to adopt, and we've posted it to our website. And I would encourage parents to visit the Missouri Attorney General website, download that resolution, take it to your school board meeting, and ask your school board to adopt that resolution to make a promise to you parents that they won't take your kids to drag shows. And again, it seems absurd, it seems silly, and when we were seeing this happen in blue states, it was frightening enough, but the fact that it's happening in Missouri is disturbing, it's shameful, and we've got to put a stop to it. And that's why we're going to try to empower parents to be involved in their children's education and to have a say in that process.
And finally, I wanted to ask you, I noticed this, I was just perusing through the website of the Attorney General's office, and I did see another piece here where you directed a letter to CVS and Walgreens over distribution of abortion pills. And there was a period of time in this country when the pro-abortion advocates were all about safe and rare, and now it's like, hell, we'll just send you through the mail so you can do it at home yourself without verification. And this can be extremely, extremely dangerous. The number of emergency room visits due to these sorts of forms of abortion always spikes. And if you would, tell us about your letter specifically to CVS and Walgreens on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I want Missouri to be the safest state in the nation for children, and that includes unborn children and their mothers. And so the shipment of drugs through the mail, the shipment of abortion drugs through the mail violates state and federal law. So the FDA doesn't get to undermine state and federal law by promulgating a rule. A rule has less authority than statutes that are enacted by our elected representatives. And so by the FDA trying to do this, they're undermining the rule of law, and they're undermining our state sovereignty and our General Assembly's ability to speak for the people of the state of Missouri. And so we're going to stand up and fight for the unborn and protect children and make sure that we're holding the Biden administration accountable for the rule of law.
Well, you certainly have been busy. Having not been in the position for nobody can claim that you're spending time just, rearranging the office or anything. How have you liked it so far?
Hey, look, it is a humbling privilege to get to serve the people of the state of Missouri as the 44th Attorney General. I love the Constitution, I love the rule of law, and I love the people of this state. And if folks out there like those things too, we probably have a lot in common. When I served in the United States Army, I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution and was willing to put my life on the line to do it. And that's a commitment I carry with me to the Attorney General's office. I've fought for the Constitution in the war on terror, and I'm happy and honored to get to carry on that fight in the courtroom on behalf of the people of this state today.
Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, appreciate you being with us this morning. Next time you're through Springfield, stop on in. We'd love to have you in the studio.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for everything you do for the state of Missouri as well.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day. That is the Attorney General of Missouri, Andrew Bailey. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Well, as we slowly move into that spring season, maybe you are getting into that mindset of maybe spring home repairs. And if that's the case, but you're not exactly sure who to call for all those home repairs and maintenance that you may need done, I highly recommend my friends over at Beatles Property Maintenance. Now, Beatles is spelled Beadles, and they are a family-owned, local-owned business that has been serving our community for over a decade now. Now, they can help you out with a lot of those big-name items as well as some of those small items, too. So maybe you have mold in your house that you would like to tackle this spring. Beatles can help you. Maybe you have some crawl space repairs and you just don't want to go down there. Don't blame you. That's why you send the Beatles Property Maintenance team. Maybe you're thinking about selling your house and you need to get some things fixed. Beatles Property Maintenance. And of course, maybe you have a honey-do list. Maybe you've noticed some things throughout the winter season as you're staying inside more. Maybe you're thinking with your partner, oh, we should get some new lights, or maybe we should do a bathroom remodel, or maybe we should tackle our back deck. Beatles Property Maintenance can help you out with those items as well. So whether you have a big property maintenance item that needs to be done or just a list of small repair items, Beatles Property Maintenance is the company that you can trust. You can find all of their contact information housed at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
The discussion regarding having public school districts take kids to sexually driven drag shows is missing a very important component to the discussion, and it's just like, why? You notice that? We don't even talk about that? Why? Why? What is this obsession? It would be one thing if we were leading the world in results in educating our young people, but we're not, particularly when it comes for the amount of dollars spent per student. We are way, way behind. If we were so far ahead, we're like, what are we going to do with our time? We cannot learn anymore. I mean, our graduation rates, we have just hit peak performance. No one holds a candle to us. What are we going to do? Even then, if drag shows for small children were put out there as a proposed idea, I think that the first question would be like, okay, and what value does that offer? No one is asking that question. And it's because the answer is in the context of an education to prepare us to take on the rest. I mean, as we talk about the dangers of China, the education front is another one in which they have declared war effectively on us. And here, our push for education, you know what their push is? It is to get a foothold here into the United States. There are many who come here pregnant, have a baby, so that it is a citizen, go back, get the public education in China, and then get to come back here and get into some of these universities that have research labs and so forth, and they're allowed to because they were born in the United States. They're very deliberate. They're very competitive. And they are not the only culture that has enough respect and enough care for that particular issue to the point that they make it a top priority. Meanwhile, you have unions and some of these teachers who are supposed to care about the education of children, and this is what they're doing. Do you think that a country like China, who wishes us ill will and would love to be producing young people that are far beyond the education level of the United States, do you think that they like or dislike what it is that we're doing here? And do you think that they see these stories and there's a push by teachers' unions and by an entire political party and many teachers and school boards that their priority seems to be dragging kids off to drag shows? How do you think China views that? They're loving it. It's less work for them. And it doesn't make one transphobic. It doesn't make one hate people who dress in drag to say that's probably not the best use of time for young people. In an increasingly competitive world where you have tech companies that are increasingly relying on people that are educated outside of the United States, perhaps drag shows are not the best use of time. Aside from the inappropriate nature of it, evidently there's some. Do you notice a lot of times it seems like these are people that don't actually have their own kids, but there are some that have their own kids, and fine. You think that is an appropriate, you want to do that in family time, knock yourself out. You want to have a family day where you go to a drag show, then so be it. But utilizing a period of time, which people are paying a pretty penny for through their tax dollars, to take children out of classrooms in which they would actually otherwise potentially could be learning things that allow them to compete against those who are serious about learning, and instead dragging them off to these sexually explicit shows, not a good use of time. And this odd obsession with this one thing, and I can tell you why it is, because I understand human nature. It's because people that they don't like it. That's what it all boils down to. This, once upon a time, was an absolute nothing, because no one would have ever conceived, left, right, Democrat, Republican, Christian, atheist, having young children taken out of school to being taken to a drag show. Nobody. That's why it never happened. But all it takes is, frankly, one weirdo that decides to do this, and when the first people that are vocal about it, the first people culturally that say this has to stop, they're right-wingers, they're conservatives, and so what is the instinct of people on the left? Well, if they hate it, that means we must do it. That's the driving force behind it. Their moral compass is tied to their political opposition. And whatever the political opposition says, even if it's something that unspoken, once upon a time, for generations, they agreed with, now that it's said out loud, we have to take the other position because they're awful people. And a combination of that with people that are trying, frankly, to be cool. Look how cool I am. I'm taking my kid to a drag show. I'm hip. I'm on the curve of what's cool. You get this. But it doesn't benefit the kids. It doesn't benefit society. All it does is fill this insecurity in empty people to stick it to others and to feel cool while doing it. And I'm talking about not the existence of drag shows themselves. I don't care. Do whatever. It doesn't make any difference to me. But it's this dragging kids to them. That focus, that instinct. It's not normal. They are the ones who are not normal. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Oil changes synonymous with routine maintenance, but there's so much more than just that. We think of the oil change, and it's 3 months, 3,000 miles. Of course, when you get the synthetics, that can change. They put the little sticker up there, but what you don't have a sticker for is when do you get your transmission fluid checked? When do you get your power steering fluid checked? When do you get a number of other belts and hoses checked and inspected? Because all of these things over time, they break down, they experience wear and tear. And in this part of the country where we can have extreme heats, we can have extreme colds, it can greatly accelerate the breakdown of all of those components. That's why routine maintenance is important. So how do you know what to have checked? Because here's the thing. Sometimes we just think that they're just going to check everything from top to bottom. No, if you bring it in for an oil change, they're going to give you an oil change unless you ask them to look at something else, generally speaking. So tell them you want to have that schedule from the manufacturer. That way you know at 77,000 miles you also need these things checked, and at 130,000 miles. A1 Custom Car Care for all of those routine maintenance need. Keep the life expectancy of your vehicle running as long as possible. There's a new report out that it's interesting at the same time it is not surprising. Pregnancy centers offer better services to women than abortion facilities. Now, you may recall a few years ago when there was a discussion about diminishing the taxpayer-funded components to Planned Parenthood. All of a sudden, Planned Parenthood was elevated to the single greatest resource for women's health in existence. It was the only place, the way they talked, that a woman could get any sort of health care. Well, it turns out after a study from Contraception, which is not a conservative outlet, that pregnancy centers offer much better services when it comes to the health of a mother as a patient than abortion clinics do. And these are the facilities that people like Elizabeth Warren have demanded Google start blocking the searches. Some of the details on that coming up in the upcoming hour. American Transmissions Talk and Text Line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. My name is Nick Reed. Everybody, welcome to the show. How do you do? Hope you're doing well. There's an interesting study in the journal Contraception, which is not right-wing, it's not conservative. And they found that in their study, pregnancy centers offered better and less expensive health care services to women than the centers that offer abortions. It's almost as if the abortion facilities aren't really concerned about a woman's health after all. It's just about churning out those abortions. And now, of course, convincing young kids that they should have sex change operations. It provides strong statistical evidence, their study, that pro-life pregnancy help centers offer better and less expensive services than the abortion facilities. In particular, it found that pregnancy centers had shorter appointment wait times than abortion facilities and were considerably more likely to offer same-day appointments. Even more important, it found that abortion facilities frequently charge for pregnancy tests and ultrasounds, where pregnancy centers almost never charge for those services. Well, let's be honest. We know why they charge for ultrasounds. Abortion clinics, because they don't want people taking them. That's the last thing they want. The least amount of information the mother has about her baby, the better it is for their business model. Because one thing that we know is the more that a mother knows about her baby, the less likely she is to kill that baby. This is just, it's a known fact. And it makes sense. And so it does not surprise me that you have these abortion providers that will charge for any sort of procedure or service in which the mother is going to know more about her unborn child. The study uses strong methodology. The authors paired up 445 abortion facilities with a nearby pregnancy help center. Data from all 50 states were collected and analyzed. The authors found that over 68% of pregnancy health care or help centers offered same-day pregnancy visits, as compared with only about 32% of abortion facilities. You know, this is really fascinating because if you recall, we have been told for some time that these centers, they don't really care about the health of a mother. This is just a bunch of Christian bigots who want men to be in charge of women's bodies, and ultimately they don't even care about a woman's health, yet they manage to provide better health care than abortion facilities. Oh. Or I should say facilities that also offer abortion. They're not just abortion facilities, but that happens to be one of the, quote, services they provide. How is it that they actually provide better service than the people who we're told care more about women? Not very good at their job, apparently. Furthermore, only a very small percentage of the pro-life pregnancy centers included in the study charged for either pregnancy tests or ultrasounds. Conversely, at abortion facilities, the median price for a pregnancy test was $24. The median price for an ultrasound was over $162. So you have, and like I said, it's clear the charge there. You have somebody who comes in already unsure. They just want to get it done. They want to get it over with, and they're told, now you can have this, but we're going to charge you $160 for it. Clearly, you're going to get a number of people who otherwise, a number of mothers who otherwise, you know, if it were free, might do it, but that's just enough to say, I just want this done and over with. They know what they're doing. National Review notes that Contraception, who did the study, is certainly not a conservative academic journal. Many of the studies they publish have a bias in favor of abortion. Furthermore, the authors of the Contraception study are academics affiliated with the University of Pittsburgh, and none has any connection with any pro-life group. A liberal academic journal published an analytically rigorous study showing that pregnancy centers offer better and less costly services to women as well. Overall, this is a great testament to the nearly 3,000 pregnancy help centers in the United States that tirelessly provide life-affirming alternatives to pregnant women every day. And it once again shows that those who masquerade as caring about women's health in the name of abortion don't. Because these are the facilities that you have activists carrying out domestic terrorist attacks against. These are the facilities that members of the Democrat Party, like Elizabeth Warren, write letters to search engines like Google's demanding that whenever somebody is searching, when a young mother is searching for a place to get some form of health care during her pregnancy, that it blocks the pregnancy care centers, the centers that actually provide better, more efficient, and cheaper health care, instead driving them to the less efficient, more expensive abortion clinics. Does that really sound like the efforts of somebody who cares about the health of a mother? Jason Rima with the latest news update. First Alert forecast sponsored by Navant Employee Benefits that work. Mostly cloudy, a high today of 65, 43 tonight with rain likely. Cloudy tomorrow with a 40% chance of rain, high of 45, and rain on Wednesday with a high of 49. I did not, that's the first I heard that they are evidently, it sounds like from Rima's reporting there, looking at using eminent domain to take down the Hotel of Terror.
Yeah.
We may see a lot of young people get very active in local politics.
I think so.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they won't care, but it clearly is one of the...
I love the Hotel of Terror.
Now, what's the other one? There's...
Dungeons of Doom.
Yeah, so Hotel of Terror, we actually went to. It's the first time I'd been to either of those, and I had not been to a haunted house. I always forget. My sister and brother-in-law and another one of my sisters, and I forget who else in the family. We went to a couple over in Cape Girardeau and Jackson when I was visiting there several years ago. Prior to that, it was high school maybe that I had done one. And so we took the girl child and a friend, and then another friend of the girl child met us there. And I don't know that my shirt, I think, was probably stretched out afterwards because I was in the lead. And then my wife was in the back. And then the three girls were clinging to my shirt, just like pulling it the whole time. And it was really fun. I mean, it's kind of expensive, but it's fun for the experience. But we decided we're going to do both next year because you can pay. It's cheaper to get the two. And then they'll hayride you over to the other one, and I don't know, we hadn't done it, we didn't know what to expect, but yeah, I don't know.
It's a lot of fun.
I'd hate to see that, like, just finally we go, we enjoy it, and then the city's going to come in and evidently try and tear it down so that they can work on that.
Now apparently it's been open for like 45 years. Do you know that?
The hotel itself?
Yeah. Well, it says 45 years ago, the Hotel of Terror opened its doors and frightened many guests
You're
who walked through its haunted halls.
How many years ago?
45 years ago. That's what KY3 has.
Oh, here's a story.
Story?
Then that means it's been around longer than I have.
I will be very sad. We used to go all the time whenever I was in high school. That was kind of the staple of Halloween time.
Years.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Holy cow, I had no idea that it had been around that long. I don't know why. So yeah, they say that this is the KY3 story. Of course, Rima just had the story also. The mainstream bridge is deteriorating. Right now, large trucks like buses, emergency vehicles, trucks can't drive over it. City leaders say the bridge can't be repaired until the building's removed.
I'm going to be so upset if they remove it.
Yeah. Huh. So the owners of the Hotel Terra in the city began negotiations back in 2019. Now the city wants to hire a third party to determine just compensation. So that tells me that the owners of Hotel Terror are saying, well, here's what we want. And the city's like, no, I don't think so. We're going to have somebody else determine whether or not that is just compensation. So that's what that sounds like to me. Wonder if there'll be protests.
I don't know. Maybe we should lead one.
Yeah. I don't know in the name of what. I don't know.
Terror.
Well, in the name of terror. Why is everybody always dogging on terror? What about all the good things terror has done?
And hotels.
And hotels, too. And, I mean, you've got two of them together here. This is just such a predictable story. We've got to get a traffic update. Electric vehicles, right? And they're doing everything they can to force people into electric vehicles, including tax breaks. And the Treasury Department is changing the definition of certain vehicles in order to give tax breaks to people that don't actually already get the tax breaks. So in other words, instead of waiting for Congress to, write a bill that gives allowances, they'll just change the definition of a vehicle in the capacity of these tax cuts and tax credits, that is, so that they can give tax credits to people that weren't meant to get tax credits. That next, I'm Nick Reed. Regarding the city's efforts to tear down the Hotel of Terror for the purposes of reinforcing, doing whatever maintenance necessary to the bridge there, and they say cannot be done with the hotel still there. Someone texted in, Hotel of Terror, they don't pay a hotel motel tax. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they want to tear it down. They're of no use to us. They don't pay that hotel motel tax. Treasury Department announced changes to the definition of an SUV, a move that opens up more electric vehicles to the tax credits passed in the Inflation Reduction Act that could have otherwise been excluded due to price limits. Treasury put out a notice on Friday saying it has changed its vehicle classification. How much more Orwellian can we get? Let's see. These vehicles, Congress passed the laughably named Inflation Reduction Act, and it has this qualification for certain vehicles to get certain tax incentives, but we just don't think it's enough. Oh, so we'll just change the definition of things. That's all we'll do. Isn't that neat the way that works? Treasury put out a notice Friday saying it changed its vehicle classification standard used for SUVs and other vehicle types, which is expected to allow models such as the Tesla Model Y and Cadillac Lyriq access to the expanded subsidies by subjecting them to a higher MSRP cap that limits credits. The Inflation Reduction Act, okay, we know about all that credits. See, the new electric sedan, because these are sedans. They're just going to change the name. You know, hey, if a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a boy, can't an SUV be a sedan and a sedan be an SUV, right? Because words are meaningless now. Words only mean what the people in power say that they mean. Why do we even have dictionaries any longer? What's the point in that? A new electric sedan costing more than $55,000 is ineligible under the law passed by Congress and signed by Biden, while an SUV with an MSRP above $80,000 is ineligible. So in other words, you can get the credit if you get a sedan, $55,000 or under, and for an SUV that is $80,000 or under. Well, what occurred here is that you have these two new vehicles, the Model Y, Tesla line, and then the Cadillac Lyriq that are sedans, but they exceed the $55,000 mark. And so what do? They're like, well, we're just going to change them to SUVs. Well, that's what we'll call them. The government, Treasury Department. We'll just change the name. That way the tax situation now applies to them. This has just everything Democrat wrapped into a nice little package. You have legislation being ignored and altered for the purposes of people who are bureaucrats and what their desires are. You have the redefining of terms in order to justify it. Words have no meanings. Legislation have no meanings because the people who are, have this totalitarian mindset, they just change words. They change legislation. They just, whatever. Here's what we want. So this is the new definition. And the sane amongst us, the majority, I would say, amongst us, are all told that we must abide. New polling comes up showing 39%, only I should say, 39% want Kamala Harris to be Joe Biden's running mate in 2024. And there's additional polling that shows that people do not want a rematch between Trump and Biden. They just don't want to go through that again. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Hey everyone, Sarah Myers.
Hey, that is me. Well, there is always that misconception of, can I get a new roof in the wintertime, especially if I need one? And that myth has been debunked because Josh with the Pyramid Roofing Company, he has told us many times that if you do need a roof repair or a new roof, oftentimes it can be done in those winter months. So if you've been waiting around until spring and you've had a leak in your roof, maybe you have a bucket underneath it that's dripping in the kitchen, and you're thinking, oh, I cannot wait until spring so I can get my roof repaired. Well, I highly recommend that you give my friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company a call today. They can come out, they can do a free estimate for you, do a roof inspection, and see exactly what is going on with your roof. They'll take tons of photos and videos, they'll see exactly what you need and what you don't need, and then they'll get the job done. It is as simple as that. So you don't have to wait until spring to get that roof repair done. And of course, if you do need their services, highly recommend that you check out ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab. There you will find all of their contact information plus a little video of the work that the Pyramid Roofing Company did on my roof. And once again, all of that's at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
Only 39% want Kamala Harris to be Joe Biden's running mate in 2024. This is likely voters in the U.S. The poll released Friday found that 39% want to see Harris run as the running mate if he runs in 2024. In comparison, 48% of the respondents did not want to see Harris be the running mate. 39 did, 48 did not. 13% said they were unsure. Divided by party, 68% of Republican respondents said that they would not want Harris to run as the candidate on the 2024 ticket, while 63% of Democrat respondents said that she should remain on the ticket. However, with independents, 32% said she should be the running mate, while a majority, 51% of independent voters think that she should not be. Only 17% were not sure. Additionally, the poll found that only 49% of the respondents also had a favorable impression, which included 19% who said they had a very favorable view. I mean, come on. I can understand if politically you choose not to dislike someone, but to very favorably, 17%. I know in polling, you're always going to have some percentage. You're never going to have zero. Unless the one exception was a couple of weeks ago when that study was done on the difficulty in voting under the new so-called Jim Crow laws in Georgia, and they found 0% of black people had a difficult time voting. Other than that, I've never, ever, ever seen zero in a poll. But 17% have a very favorable view of Kamala Harris. A Democrat strategist in South Carolina told the Washington Post, "Every fiber in my body wants her to be president. Everything I've ever fought for is for someone like her to be president, a cackling nincompoop? Or are you talking about skin color? The cover of the book, not the content." One Democrat strategist added, "I think she's a good person with a good heart who can lead the country." I just don't believe that. I don't believe anyone can look at her and think that. Anyone who believes somebody like Kamala Harris can lead the country has no concept of what leadership means. I'm sorry. And listen, I'm not saying that because she's a Democrat. I'm saying that because she's a bumbling fool. All she does, look, she has complained about the leadership positions she was given. In an interview she did sometime towards the end of last year, she complained that she just needs to learn to say no because she was given too much to do. That's leadership? She's vice president. She hasn't, the things that she has been given, the border, for example, she hasn't done that. She's a no-show. Meanwhile, a new poll shows no one wants to see two geriatrics go head-to-head in 2024. That's the Red State headline. That next, I'm Nick Reed. First alert forecast, mostly cloudy today, a high of 65. There is rain likely tonight, down to 43. Clouds tomorrow with a 40% chance of rain, a high of 45, 49, and rain on Wednesday. New Washington Post, ABC News poll shows that a majority of Democrats want someone other than Joe Biden to run for president in 2024, and more Republicans want someone other than Trump than those Republicans who do. Now, there's a bit of a difference here, and you'll notice the wording is different, and here's why. Among Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents, the Post-ABC poll finds 58% say they would prefer someone other than Biden be their nominee, which is almost double the 31% who support Biden. So you have 58% that say no. These are Democrat-leaning. 31% who say yes. Among Republican and Republican-leaning independents, 49% said they would prefer someone other than Trump as their nominee in 2024, compared with 44% who favor the former president. So what you've got here between Trump has much, much greater support amongst Republican and Republican-leaning voters than Biden does amongst Democrat and Democrat-leaning voters, where a majority, you're almost touching 60% of Democrats say Biden should not be the guy. Whereas you don't have even a majority that are against Trump doing it. So it looks better for Trump. More than 6 in 10 Americans, 62%, said they would be dissatisfied or angry if Biden were reelected in 2024, while 56% said the same thing about the prospect of Trump returning to the White House for a second time. Slightly more than 1/3, 36%, said that they would be enthusiastic or satisfied but not enthusiastic if Biden were reelected, and so forth. The challenge that Trump faces here is one that establishment Republicans are failing to recognize as a challenge that every viable Republican candidate is going to also face. The reason people, normal people, don't want, well, you've got a disproportionately high number of Democrats that don't want Biden to do it, and you've got a plurality, though be it by a small amount, Republicans that say they don't want Trump to be the nominee, is largely just based off how emotionally exhausting the last election was. That combined with the fact that Democrats essentially never, ever let up. I mean, they still haven't let up on Trump. The guy's not even president. And people get tired of that. And the Republican establishment gets tired of it. It's one of the reasons that the Republican establishment is always trying to earn favor with the media, is because they get tired of being dogged on. They get tired of being mistreated. They get tired of getting the short end of the stick when it comes to coverage. But what there are those in the establishment, unfortunately, however, that think that somehow they can change that by giving in, by caving, by sacrificing principles, by proving, look how we can reach across the aisle, by getting on shows with Scarborough and all these other left-wingers and having pleasant conversations and conceding certain points. They think that come election time, when the road meets the rubber meets the road, that they're all of a sudden going to start being fair because, look, we gave them a reasonable Republican. But that's naive. That is very naive. And so the emotional reaction, and I understand it. I'm not saying I loved it either. It is exhausting. But I also recognize that whomever gets the nomination, it's going to be the same way. They never go backwards. The nonstop attacks on Trump weren't because of Trump. It was because of them, the left. And they always go an inch further in, an inch further in, an inch further in, because that's what happens when you smell weakness. And that's what the Democrat elites, they always, they don't always, I mean, well, the elites do. And that's why Trump came in, was able to beat them, because they just display weakness. I've always thought it was fascinating, the inverted position, generally speaking, that when it comes to dealing with foreign actors, Democrats are the party that demonstrates weakness. I mean, we've been talking about that in the context of the Chinese spy balloon. But when it comes to domestic things, they're fierce, they're unapologetic, they fight tooth and nail against other Americans that aren't part of the same political party, and Republicans all of a sudden become the little weaklings that are so afraid of what the reaction will be, and, well, we don't want to, be a pariah. And if Trump doesn't run, whomever gets the nomination, it could be somebody that the media portrays as being, a wonderful type of Republican. It could be Lisa Murkowski. And if it looked like she would become the next president, blocking a Democrat from doing so, she would become the most crazed right-wing experience that you've ever seen run for office, according to the media and the Democrats. Can you think of any time in modern history when there was a Republican running for the White House that Democrats in the media said, oh, you know what? Well, this one we can't call racist. Nope, this one we can't say hates the poor. This one we can't call homophobic. No, we can't accuse this one of trying to destroy the environment and being in the back pocket of the oil industry. Have I missed this individual in the general election? Have I missed this Republican that Democrats have tossed aside all of the name-calling? I haven't missed it because it always happens, even when it's a John McCain, even when it's a Mitt Romney, the very people that the party tells us are the sorts of Republicans that can win because they reach across the aisle and can work with Democrats. Democrats only work with Republicans when it is to the benefit of the Democrats. And when a Republican is running for the White House, that is not to the benefit of Democrats. So they're going to attack the person, whomever it is. So for these Asa Hutchinsons and the Sununus and the Paul Ryans and all the establishment Republicans that are out, well, we just need to move past it. For what? I mean, this is what needs to be asked. Let's have a little bit of substance, shall we? And I'm not saying that there aren't reasonable arguments for or against Trump running. But every time we hear, well, it's just time for the party to move on. Why? Well, just because? No, I want more than that. Now, I can imagine people who want him to run again giving plenty of reasons for doing so. The economy being a tremendous one. Somebody had texted in asking if I felt that the economy would be doing better had COVID not occurred. Yeah, it would be like 1984 to 1988. It absolutely would. So you look at the economy. Last week you had Border Patrol agents before Congress saying that under the Trump years it was the best the border had ever been, and so quickly it has turned into the worst in terms of security. The Abraham Accords. North Korea stopped testing their nuclear capabilities. Putin stopped invading countries like Georgia and the Crimean Peninsula of Ukraine. ISIS, that whole huge carve-out they had of Syria and Iraq, gone. NATO, for the first time, kicking in the NATO nations more of their fair share, what they actually owed as part of the partnership because of Trump. You can go down the list of reasons that one would say, yeah, we could use Trump for another 4 years. So for those who are arguing, well, we just need to move on, give me not just because, the media is going to be mean to him. Give substantive reasons as to why he was bad as president of the United States. Why another 4 years, if he gets elected, the area is based off the results from the first 4 years that is a Republican who claims you're for lower taxes, did that, claims you're pro-life, did that. Claims that you're for border security, did that. Claim that you're for, as a Republican Party, energy dependence or independence, did that. We can go down the list of things that the Republican Party claims it stands for. Trump, in a meaningful way, did every single one of those things off the top of my head. All right, so those are reasons that he would be a good person to run and to be president for another 4 years. Now, for Republicans in the establishment that say, no, he wouldn't, give me the reasons why. And if your answer is going to be, well, he's the only one who can't win, we heard that before, so that one doesn't work. Or, well, you know, he's just done so many things that the media can pound on and the Democrats are going to pound on him. And, okay, again, is there a Republican they don't do that to? Look, I'm just looking for meaningful conversation, meaningful discussion here. And I'm tired of, whether they're the elites on the left or the right, just making these blanket declarations like, well, we need to move on. And then we're just supposed to go, oh, okay, well, we don't need any reasons why. We don't need you to back it up with anything. I am not, at the same time, so closed off as to believe that Trump is the only one who can win. And I don't know if Trump would win again. There's so many I just don't believe that any honest intellectual person can say one way or another that Trump's the only one and he definitely would, or there's no way he's the only one who can't. You can't say either of those things. You just can't. Largely because he's, batting 500, essentially. Won one, didn't win another. Sometimes 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. American Transmission's Talk and Text line. I noted that Trump was batting 500 on elections, won one, lost one. Someone texted in. He was 2-0, by the way. LOL. Well, this is true. Well, you do have that whole component also. Let's not pretend as if. Forget the illegal stuff. Forget the ballot box stuffing illegally. Just what they've legalized. It was noted during the Biden-Trump election that early on in the evening, on election night, Trump campaign mood was all quite uplifted because of the returns on Florida, and they were consistent with the returns from the year prior. It was also one of the states, in terms of influential, arguably the only state that did not open itself up to all of this early voting, open itself up to having drop boxes put all over the place. And so when you look at the state that did not make it easier for political activists to go gather up armfuls and armfuls and armfuls of ballots, going from one ballot box to another in the middle of the night, that would be Florida. Did not allow that. Trump fared just as well as he did the prior 4 years earlier. The Republicans once again allowed themselves to be duped into passing legislation that made it much more difficult for free and fair elections, and have allowed Democrats to shift this election. While Republicans are trying to get votes, Democrats are busy getting ballots. And aside from any sort of illegal aspects that evidence indicates may have very well occurred, the legalization of stuffing the ballot box is something that is just another obstacle that Americans have to overcome. All right. Now, all that being said, here, this was interesting. Little bit of information. It has to do with the refugees that leave blue states and go to red states. This is something that clearly has been occurring for some time. The concern that many people have had is whether or not these people would, are these blue people or red people? So, in other words, when you have people flee Democrat states like New York and California to go to places like Texas and Florida, are these Republicans who have fled because they cannot stand any longer to be in a state that is a one-party rule system and taking their Republican votes with them? Or are these Democrats who, it's unavoidably obvious that the standard of living of the blue state that they're in is something that is not what they want in life, and so they go where the standard of living is better, and that would be a state like Florida, but they refuse to acknowledge it's their own ideology that's doing that, so they import Democrat votes. And in fact, we had an author of the week, it was a couple of years ago, I think, who talked about how Texas, Democrats were really talking about turning Texas blue, noting it's not because of illegal immigration, but because of the import of political refugees, Democrats from New Jersey and California and New York that are going to continue to vote Democrat, and that's how you're going to lose a lot of states to the blue side. And we haven't really known the answer to this so much. However, Breitbart has a story, exclusive. Vice Chair of Florida GOP. Of the net 1 million who have moved to the state, only 17,000 are registered Democrats, while the number of registered Republicans is much, 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 much higher. Ziegler, the name here, Christian Ziegler, the vice chair of the Republican Party of Florida, who's running for the chairmanship, told Breitbart News Saturday about the success the Sunshine State has seen over the past 4 years, noting that Republicans are in a strong position politically, particularly in terms of voter registration in Florida. He attributed Florida's Republicans' great victories of late in part to the fact that it is battle-tested. He also said one cannot ignore DeSantis' leadership, which has mobilized people. But as far as political apparatus, Ziegler said that the Florida's GOP goes all in with voter registration in the off year leading into the election. He said, we're trying to run up the score in voter registration. He said, explaining that there were 250,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans in Florida when DeSantis first took office in 2018. Now there are more than 300,000 more Republicans. So it went from favoring Democrats by 250,000 after 4 years of DeSantis to Republicans having a 300,000 number on the upside, above Democrats. He provided another stunning data point noting that 1 million net new people have moved to the state and registered to vote since DeSantis first took office. So of all of the millions of people that have gone there, 1 million have registered to vote. Out of 1 million, about half of them have registered as Republicans, while only 17,000 have registered as Democrats. He said, so we are just obliterating the Democrats. So that is definitely a good sign for Republicans, as there's just been this there's validation in watching people flee blue states to red states, because it is an admission that life is better under Republican leadership. In terms of the fear as to whether they will infest and infect the state with voting Democrats. So far, at least according to voter registration, it appears as if the overwhelming number of people who go to a state like Florida are actually, they're at least registering as Republican. And if you are some left-wing, hysterically driven individual, you can understand why. I mean, they watch CNN and MSNBC, and as far as they're concerned, Florida's like the worst place ever, where they're going around and, having things open willy-nilly, and people are going to die from DeSantis being governor down there. So you can see why they may stay away. Black leaders in Miami apologized to Florida Republican Governor DeSantis after one of its members called him a racist. Pierre Rutledge, chair of the Miami-Dade Black Affairs Advisory Board, issued a statement on behalf of the entire board apologizing to DeSantis for a comment made at their Wednesday meeting from one member who claimed that DeSantis was racist. Quote, "We take it to heart when someone uses the term racist. Words matter. So as chair, I must start by saying we want to pull that back. There's nothing wrong with saying we're sorry. That's not what we've intended to say or be depicted by anyone, and that is not the feeling of this board." Glenn Beck's next. Talk to you tomorrow. I'm Nick Reed.